Good afternoon. Welcome to this month's National AgTech Forum. The National AgTech Forum is an initiative that is supported by AgLaunch in Memphis, Tennessee, in partnership with NCBiotech, based in Research Triangle Park, North Carolina. That's the North Carolina Biotechnology Center, and AgStart in Woodland, California. So we have the West Coast, the East Coast, and the Middle Coast represented in our program today and with our sponsorship. The goal of the National AgTech Forum is simply to share new ideas and make connections and drive new investments in ag innovation. I'm Tom Womack, Deputy Commissioner with the Tennessee Department of Agriculture, and it's my privilege to serve as your moderator today. And we have an outstanding panel of specialists and entrepreneurs that I have the privilege of introducing. Collectively, they are virtually a brain trust, a wealth of information and experience in the field of ag tech innovation. Today's topic is Connected Regions, Driving Farmer Innovation. Before we begin our discussion, I do have a few housekeeping items to share with you. Please note that the next virtual forum will be on July 21st. That's July 21st, hosted by AgStart, and the topic will be Food Safety Innovation. Food Safety Innovation. Registration will open next week. Hopefully we can share a link so that we can direct you to that shortly. This event is being recorded, and it will be posted early next week on today's forum's event page at ncbiotech.org/events. And again, hopefully we can put that link up so that everybody can find it easily. There will be two ways to communicate with us today. First, please use the chat tab at the bottom of your screen only for Zoom questions and technical difficulties. Again, use the chat tab at the bottom of your screen for Zoom questions and technical difficulties. We will have some time for Q&A with all of our panelists. When it comes time for Q&A, please use the Q&A tab that you'll find at the bottom of your screen. You will be able to see and maybe like certain questions that are in the queue. If you like them, it'll drive those questions up to the top, and we'll try to get those questions as a priority. Here's how today's program is going to run. I have two set of panelists to introduce, and the first panel is going to be focused on the support system for startups. And the panelists include Rebecca Kaufman. She is with AgLaunch in Memphis, Tennessee. Liz Keehney with an R. Venture Analyst with Ag Ventures Alliance in Mason City, Iowa, and Alex Paraskevas. Alex is with SEDCOR, a nonprofit economic development group in Salem, Oregon. So we have a great panel to start with on support systems for startups. The second panel will be our main focus. It includes two individuals who are literally on the cutting edge of ag tech innovation. They've been in the trenches to make their vision a reality, and they're going to share their story with us today. The first one will be Michael Ott. Michael is CEO and founder of Rantiso in Iowa City, Iowa, and John Jackson, Global Neighbor, President of Global Neighbor in Xenia, Oregon. So we have an exciting program for you tonight, this afternoon, and you'll want to stick around for all the presentations. First, you may be asking, why is someone with the government here, the government being someone that is not always known for innovation or being progressive? Why is somebody from the government involved in today's Ag Tech Forum? And I've been with the Department of Agriculture and in public service for 35 years now. I do have an agricultural background and live on a small family farm just north of Nashville, Tennessee. I've been fortunate in my career to see a transition in the way state leadership thinks about rural economic development. Not only will it help drive jobs and investments. But I think state leaders have come to realize that a more holistic approach to rural economic development is needed in many cases to help us solve some of the most pressing problems that we have. Increasing profitability and viability for our farmers first and foremost, helping to with food security, sustainability of our natural resources, building resiliency in our food, fiber, and fuel supply chains, something that we all experienced firsthand during the pandemic. And then simply creating a pipeline for creating jobs and more opportunity for a more diverse and inclusive workforce and entrepreneurs. So those are some of the things that we're looking at in Tennessee that help drive our interests in the sphere of ag innovation. Our partnership with AgLaunch started it started in 2015. It actually started, the seed for the idea of AgLaunch started well before that. About 10 years ago, our state's agricultural leadership came together to develop a strategic plan, one that would help us increase productivity on our farms and forests and help drive ag and forest business investment in Tennessee. And one of the things they identified at that time was ag innovation as an important part of creating those opportunities, and also possibly creating a secondary ag economy that could spur new jobs and investment. That strategy has evolved over time, and it's been embraced by our current governor, Governor Bill Lee, who has a farm background himself, and also our Commissioner of Agriculture, Charlie Hatcher, who is a dairy farmer. He's a veterinarian, and he's an innovator in his own right. So they certainly recognize the importance of placing Tennessee's ag industry and producers in the forefront of ag innovation. But we realize Tennessee farmers are not necessarily competing with their neighbors in Kentucky or Arkansas or Mississippi or Oregon or Iowa. They all collectively are competing for the global markets and the ability to be able to supply our world with a sustainable supply of food and fiber and fuel. And so what's good for an Iowa farmer is good for a Tennessee farmer has been our approach. We want our producers to have access to the latest technology. We believe our producers are hungry for new tools and technology that will help them to be more efficient, profitable, and sustainable in their operations. Secondly, we know that not every startup that comes to Tennessee is going to set up shop here and stay here. But we believe that a certain percentage will, and we believe that there are secondary benefits to having that exposure to those innovators here in our state, whether they find success somewhere else or not. So we're all in this game together has been our approach. Our specific role with AgLaunch as a state agency is there is a cost to farmers to be able to field test new ideas and new technology in the field. And part of our role in partnership with AgLaunch is to make that connection and help underwrite some of the costs that producers find that is required to be able to set aside time, labor, land, equipment to be able to field test some of the technology. So that's where we come into the picture. But with the leadership of Pete Nelson at AgLaunch, Rebecca Kaufman and their team, AgLaunch has been successful in working with 50 companies, driving $70 million in investments and also more than 200 jobs in the time that we've had our partnership. So we're very proud to be associated with them. So to get us started with our first panel, we are going to start with AgLaunch and start with Rebecca Kaufman. She is Senior Director with AgLaunch. She has experience from the Delta Regional Authority. Not only is she a practicing attorney in Arkansas, but she has a degree in public service and journalism. So she's a lawyer who can walk and talk at the same time. So we're proud to have you, Rebecca. tell us a little bit more about yourself and AgLaunch.
Sure, I think we can agree though that I'm not great at the unmuting at appropriate time, so maybe we should work on that too. But thank you, Tom, for that introduction. I'm really excited to be here. AgLaunch is truly a product of the partnerships of the people that are on this phone. So this is really exciting, or this webinar. We are really interested in connecting companies, startup companies, ag tech companies with farmers. That's kind of the very most basic way to describe how we're doing it. So we have formed a network of farmers, mostly in Tennessee at this point, who are screening technologies, working directly with them, and providing really key feedback. So we are excited about that farmer-led innovation. We think that that's going to lead to higher success rates and sustainable and investable companies ultimately. We are a little different. Our farmer network is not just a group of any farmer that we find. These are really early adopter farmers who are interested in technology. They're doing some really innovative things on their farms already. And we've organized them in a way that they are also getting an upside with working with these companies. So we think that there is value that the farmers bring to the table in terms of expertise, experience, all kinds of valuable knowledge and insight that these startups can get really early on in their development process, so they can then iterate and move on. So that's really what we are about. We could not have done that without the collaboration that TDA and the support that they have given us through the cost share dollars, like you just said, but also in just identifying some really good partners across the state, whether it's farmers or other funders or different things like that. So we are excited about farmer-led innovation specifically because we think that those are going to be the most successful companies, and we want our farmers to have access to that.
Rebecca, can you tell us what's the one thing you want a startup to know about AgLaunch before they sign up for your accelerator program? And can you also expound on some of the examples of the producers you're working with?
Sure. So I'll start with the farmer network itself, because I think that's really kind of answers both questions in a lot of ways. I think the thing that we want startups to know is that we have a group of farmers who are committed to this. It is not just like contract research. It's not just we'll run a trial for you and see how it goes. These are farmers who are really bought into the idea that technology can help them be more efficient, diversify, and ultimately add value to their operations. And so that's the thing that we want startups to understand. You won't just see a farmer once. If you come through our program or in some way work with us, you're going to have a pretty dedicated partner, not just with us on staff, but also with the farmer that you'll be working with over 2 to 3 years. So our farmer network is really diverse in a lot of different ways, but we have livestock producers, and those vary from very standard pork producers to pasture, grass-fed beef operations, but also small indoor farms in our urban areas, and row crop farms as well, especially in West Tennessee. We have a vineyard in East Tennessee, and then some small organic 1-acre farms kind of in the southern part of the state as well. So what we're saying is that our assets in Tennessee is that we have a very diversified farm economy. We have a lot of producers doing a lot of different things, not quite like Oregon and the specialty crops, which Alex will talk a little bit about, but that's part of the reason that these partnerships are super key for us, is having access to different kinds of growing operations and then testing these technologies on a lot of different kinds of farms. So maybe you have a soil sensor and you would be interested in testing that in the organic farm, but also maybe the soybean field, but also maybe the vineyard. We can offer that. And our producers are really excited about participating in those ways and getting that information and data to those startups.
Thank you for that information. And we are really proud of the work that you're doing here in Tennessee and in our neighboring states to help bring innovation to our farmers. I'd like to bring Liz Keehney into the conversation. Liz is a venture analyst with Ag Ventures Alliance. She is a seasoned investment professional. She has worked with startups, I believe, in Iowa, Texas, both as an independent consultant and through other venture capital organizations. Liz, welcome, and please tell us a little more about yourself and the work of Ag Ventures Alliance.
Thank you, Tom, and thanks everyone for being here today. Again, I'm Liz Keehney, Venture Analyst with Ag Ventures Alliance. Ag Ventures is a farmer-owned cooperative located in Mason City, Iowa. We have about 300 farmer members located across Iowa and southern Minnesota that focus on corn, soybean, and livestock. But we do have some organic and other specialty crop farmers in our network as well. And so to give you an idea of who we are and why Ag Ventures was formed, I'll give you a little bit of a brief history. So Ag Ventures was formed in 1998 by a group of farmers that invested in building an ethanol plant to provide themselves with access to new market opportunities. The ethanol plant was eventually acquired by another company, and the original investors received a really good return on their initial investment, which led them to continue building upon that mission of finding ways to increase farm profitability. So for the last 7 years or so, Ag Ventures has been investing in early stage companies or projects that are commercializing technology that directly benefits farm profitability. And we have 3 initiatives to carry out our mission, the primary one being Ag Ventures making direct cash investments into a company in exchange for equity or a portion of ownership. Second is Countryside Angels, which is an angel investment network that gives our individual members the opportunity to also invest in early stage technology companies. And we were actually able to leverage a grant from the Economic Development Authority to get that program off the ground, which has been really great. And third is our Farmer Trial Network. And this was really the reason for partnering with AgLaunch about 4 or 5 years ago. Our Farmer Trial Network matches the companies we work with up with farmers in our network to run in-field farm trials. The companies get a little bit of funding to help offset the costs of their trials along with real life feedback and data. And then the farmers get a little bit of equity in exchange for taking on some of that risk of trialing new technologies in their field. If you think about it, Corteva, Syngenta, Bayer, they all spend about 3 to 5% of their budget on R&D, but farmers may not be taking the same approach when it comes to their own operation. So we like to think of our initiatives as kind of third-party R&D, and that core mission is really to have farmer-led innovation. So we're partnering with AgLaunch to create these regional farmer networks to really scale this idea and this mission to create more vibrant rural economies. And we also make an initial $25,000 investment into the companies that go through AgLaunch's Row Crop Challenge. And those companies then get a chance to pitch to the Countryside Angel Network. So it just goes to show that working with these other groups here only enhances the opportunities that are available to these companies to really help them scale, but it also gives farmers a seat at the table. So I'll leave it there and turn back to you.
Well, I've actually got a couple of questions for you. There's got to be some advantages that your leadership structure is farm-based and farm-centric. Not only your network of farmers you're working with, but your leadership. That's got to provide some advantage for you and guidance for you and how you select the companies you work with.
Absolutely, yes, it does, and it's a much different approach than what you would see with a traditional, investment fund, right? Because you've actually got customers that are making that investment decision. And so it helps narrow down that criteria. So what we're looking for specifically when we're analyzing investment opportunities is number one is the team. Obviously, we want some industry experience, but as farmers know, you have to have tenacity. You have to have perseverance to build a company. It is not easy, much like farming. There are going to be good years, there are going to be bad years. And so that is really number one for us. Second, I would say is obviously a fit for the product. What is there a problem? Is there a need? Is it a need to have, or is it a nice to have? And then of course, what is the size of that market opportunity for that problem and that product?
It's very interesting. I guess one question I've been itching to ask you, with your experience in working with startups, what do you see as some of the key ingredients that make for a successful startup?
Yeah, so I would say that those three that I just mentioned, I think team specifically, we're investing at a very early stage. So our typical investment size is $100,000 into the first kind of institutional round of investment for companies. And so there's a lot yet to figure out. So you really, the biggest thing is taking a bet on that team. Is this the team that can execute this idea, this mission? So that's really number one. And then of course we bring it back to our farmers with, is there a need for this? Is this important? Does this make a big enough impact? Does it move the needle enough to make a difference?
Sounds good. Thank you, Liz, for sharing your insight. Alex Paraskevas is the Business and Retention and Expansion Manager with Strategic Economic Development Corporation, SEDCOR. It's much easier to say SEDCOR. In Salem, Oregon. He serves businesses and communities as a strategist, as a connector and a partner for a nonprofit 3-county regional economic development organization. Alex, that's a lot to say in one sentence, but tell us a little bit more about your organization and why you're in this sphere of ag innovation.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Economic development to me doesn't really mean anything. They're kind of just words. And so I always explain sort of economic development is all about sort of creating jobs and investment and making sure that industries and businesses are happy, healthy, and growing. So we do a lot of sort of on the ground just relationship building. And for our region, 3 counties, and just to give you a little bit of flavor, we have over 170 specialty crops that we grow in our 3-county area, over 220 in the state. We do a ton of, we're a lot of small family farms. Average farm size in Oregon is 475 acres. And so we've got, 97% are family farms, or 96.9%, I think. So what we have seen, and, and our role as regional economic development is really to convene folks and to sort of pull on threads of, that we hear, the commonality, sort of like hearing the anecdotes over and over again, you start to build a picture of how an industry is doing or whatnot. And I will admit, and I think everybody, Rebecca and Liz for sure have heard me say, I started at SEDCOR 3 years ago, and I didn't know the darndest thing about agriculture. And so I have been on a little bit of a spiritual journey myself, learning about sort of the diversity of the industry, the complexity, I would say the highs, the lows, maybe the terror, and of all of it. And I enjoyed taking other people on that same journey. So we started with honestly just sort of grassroots doing meetups, and then we did AgTech meetups, right? So a presenter, some beer, some pizza, and trying to get farmers in a room and trying to find the farmers that that Rebecca talked about, the early adopters, the people who are interested in technology, and really building that kind of base of relationships and people to call or to go visit. We did an event in April of 2020 that was a design sprint. So we worked with the Technology Association of Oregon, which is a statewide nonprofit, and we pitched ag problems to non-ag participants. So entrepreneurs, software engineers, and part of it is it's an excuse to preach about agriculture to people that haven't thought about it, but it's also it's really fun to take other people. It's a mechanism to take other people, like I said, on that same journey that I've been on. And so getting people exposed to sort of one of the bigger industries in the state, one of the things that we're known for. A lot of people are, we have 750 wineries in the state, right? And people don't necessarily think of wine as an agricultural product, which is nonsense, but also sort of, kind of what we're fighting. So we landed a Economic Development Administration grant late last year to really kind of bring the AgLaunch programming to the Willamette Valley and to our 3-county region. And so that kind of approach of farmer-centric product development. And so we're really early on in, what I hope to be a 3, 5, 10-year kind of approach to ag and innovation. And I can't wait to to be a couple years further down the path and have a little bit more robust programming. But we're really in the early stages of trying to build the same kind of ecosystem that Liz talks about, that Rebecca talks about, Tom, that you talk about. And I can't wait to sort of like engage better with our Department of Agriculture in Oregon, with our extension office. And so we're using this as sort of the carrot, this EDA grant as the carrot to help build this ecosystem, because we think we have the pieces here. They're just not necessarily rowing in the same direction.
Alex, most of my experience working with local economic development organizations is that they tend to focus on bricks and mortars, bringing manufacturers to an industrial development site. This really sounds like a novel approach for a local economic development agency. Have you found some success or early success in attracting ag industry?
I would say that we have, I would actually totally agree with you. This is a little bit outside the scope of most economic development organizations. For us, we talk about our region as having what we keep calling a three-dimensional supply chain. And so not only do we grow the things and harvest the things, we manufacture the harvesting equipment, we do value add processing, we manufacture a lot of the value add processing equipment, and then of course we do the warehouse and distribution in this area as well. And then, and then the final product, right? We have a lot of beer and wine and, kind of the consumer, the retail side of things. And so I think we're pretty, because of that, we see, farmers is like, it's the base of a pyramid of, of economic prosperity. And so for us, it does feel, I think, on its face a little bit outside, the scope. But once you talk about it, and actually we made a 90-second sort of quick animated video to talk about sort of economic development and couching it in agriculture that we won't stop sharing with people. And so, but we like to tell that story because it's the story of Oregon, and it's not necessarily a well-known story, even though everybody drives past hundreds of fields on their way between towns in Oregon. And so that's kind of how we're seeing it.
Well, we see it certainly the same way in Tennessee, and we have the same. We have the consumers here, we have the producers here, we have the processors. How can we connect all of those and the distributors to make the system work for everybody in a more efficient and effective way? And there's certainly been more demand during the pandemic for understanding and making those connections than ever before. So we're excited about that. We need to get to our second panel and give them plenty of time to share their stories. And again, we will take your questions after our second panelists present. And we already have some questions in the queue, so we will be covering those as quick as we can. First, I would like to introduce Michael Ott again. He is with Rantiso in Iowa City, Iowa. Michael, tell us a little bit more about Rantiso, how you got started, and what the future looks like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Excited for this. I got some slides that I'll walk through. Rantiso is a drone spraying company based in Iowa City. I will pop this up and jump right into it. So, there we go. All right. So a lot of people say that drone spraying is the future of agriculture, and we argue that they're wrong. It's the present, because Rantiso has contractors working now in 21 states. We've got over 50 contractors nationwide, and we're spraying legally with insurance, all the permits that are needed, everything that's required to deploy liquid and dry solutions from a drone. And this is a pretty big market. We're focused on using chemicals more efficiently, which maybe means spraying more often with less chemical. And our channel to market is ag retailers. And we've done a lot of customer discovery through the AgLaunch program, which was absolutely extraordinary. And we use that methodology to learn their main issues are labor. And that's true nationwide, whether you're a blueberry grower in Oregon or a cotton grower in the Mid-South. Everyone has labor problems. They're also concerned about CapEx and employee safety. Farmers deal with a lot of challenges. Here you've got a $200,000 tractor pulling out a $400,000 sprayer. That's $600,000 of equipment not working just because it rained. Here's an equally muddy situation. This is actually at Agri Center in Memphis. The drone sprayer gets up and over the crop, and that when this was a cannabis crop with a caterpillar problem, insecticide caused a lot of issues with worker exposure, and it was obviously way too muddy to get a tractor in, so the drone was the only solution that worked. That was the first time we ever sprayed. We did 1 acre in 1 hour. Now we're doing 14 acres an hour with one drone, and we're spraying very, very precisely. So you can see us going through this cornfield, spraying the inside of the field. This is a fungicide spray, and we're deliberately not spraying the edges of the field, which is most beneficial from a cost perspective. Fungicide typically on the edge of the field gets eaten by wildlife, or your yields are down so low that it doesn't make sense. So with that, we can do precise application, and we'll show that we're exactly where we intend to be. This is a video that we took at the end of last year. So we're in 7-foot tall corn and sprayed it with a fluorescent dye. And you'll be able to see we have coverage up and down that 7-foot tall corn. And then I'm going to go 1 row over, and there'll be a significant drop off, but you'll see some flecks on that leaf. There are some fluorescent flecks there. I go 1 row further, and there's basically nothing. So we're spraying, getting full coverage exactly where we intend to be. I'm going to go back and show you the brace route. You can see everything underneath there. So we're getting full coverage right to the end of where we want to spray. And then 2 rows over, there's basically nothing. And we just published a paper showing that there's no measurable drift when the drone is spraying. Now, Rantiso also has a level of uniqueness in that we're the only people legally swarming nationwide. So we can fly 3 drones at once, which is really going to improve the coverage that you can get. I'll break that out here in stats. With 1 drone, we're going at 14 acres an hour. With our autonomous loading system, mix and fill, that's going to be around 20. A swarm of 3 will do about 30, and a swarm of 3 with a mix and fill will do about 45. And that's truly what you would get with a tractor in the field if you include everything that needs to happen. When the tractor is running back and forth, you'll probably go 60 to 70 acres an hour, depending what it is. But you've got to get to the field, you got to turn around, you got to reload, you got to get nurse tanks, everything. So your true number there is probably closer to that 40 to 50 acre an hour range. Here's the concept. So when you got multiple issues in the field, say this is an insect problem, a weed problem, and a fertilizer problem, we could mix up a batch, treat the whole field with insecticide, herbicide, and fertilizer. So you'd be treating this area that doesn't need it. You'd be treating this area that doesn't need it. You'd be putting herbicide on these insects. You'd be putting this fertilizer on these weeds, actually helping the weeds grow. And you'd be putting insecticide on the spot that needs fertilizer. So you're basically wasting a bunch no matter what you do. With our system, we fly right to those spots and precisely deploy. So I'll walk through a real high level of what we're doing on the product side. We've got our drone upgrade kit and trailer and everything else. I'll just walk through them very fast. We take a existing spray drone, we strip the spraying components off and upgrade them significantly. So we're getting a 14-foot boom that sprays a 20-foot swath very precisely through the field. We about triple our productivity, going from 5 to 14 acres an hour. We're automating all steps of this, the shapefile integration, billing, how to calibrate everything. We're automating all processes there, which I'm really excited about. In fact, today we were talking about automating our digital partnerships. So we want to just take standard processes and run them through everything else. We do dry applications of cover crop seeds, pollen, beneficial insects. We had an interesting one where we have a greenhouse that always has aphid problems. They have to bring in new soil every week. And every week we fly with our drone and drop out pre-hatched ant eggs, which is a beneficial insect. That's a solid. And those ants hatch, they go eat the aphids and solve that problem that they have every week. So we get to apply every week, which is a nice business opportunity for us. This is the mix and fill, which is an autonomous loading system. With this, you can actually change what you're doing every acre, which has significant increases in productivity and optimization because you're adding in fertilizer where you need it, reducing pesticide where it's not required, et cetera, et cetera. So you can really treat the field as much smaller units. We run everything through the Rantiso app that's available on your phone. It's optimized for the contractors, the groups that are actually out there doing the spraying. Later this year, we're rolling out a web app that will be used for the end customers so they can see where we were, what the billing was, you know, all those things that you need for taxes and everything else. That exists right now, and we're pretty excited about it. We've got a whole software team that has put this together. We have a trailer that has everything you need to legally spray. It's got a generator, water tank, observation deck on the top. It's all set to go. And this is a half package here is what we're selling, a swarm of 3 drones. The trailer, mix and fill, everything else is going to be around 155,000. That's all that you need. Our business model is somewhat unique in that we sell our drones and products for a modest markup, and we make most of our money on the revenue share. So when our contractor's out, we actually handle all the billing, all the permitting, insurance, and everything for them. And we capture 1/3 of their revenue in terms of a revenue share. So that's our model. We also have annual support that comes through there. And there's a lot of benefits that the contractors get. We do lobbying together. We've got national marketing, branding, working on new technologies to roll out. So there's a big benefit in working with an organized system that you can deploy things nationwide. So we get these things paid off in about 1 spraying year. For sure, 64 days, you should easily get that if you start at the beginning of the season. You'll have everything paid off by 1 year, which for agricultural equipment is a very appealing setup. We do lots of different opportunities to spray in the field, starting at the beginning of the year, kind of helping out with burn down, getting in fence rows, spraying around waterways where we can be really precise. We do a lot of cleanup work where the existing ground rig has gone through but missed spots. We can kind of be the weed whacker if that's the mower. We do tons of trial work. In fact, just before this, I was talking about our different trials. We're going to do around 300 nationwide this year. Fungicide is our big opportunity. That's where we make most of our money. Escapes, cover crop, seed applications, micronutrients. There's lots and lots of things you can do. And we are doing this to sell to ag retailers. And really we can show their benefits of getting access to new profit opportunities, improving their efficiency, using things all through the season, and then maintaining that trusted advisor status. Hit a couple quick examples. This is a partnership we did with an imagery company called Acre. So we're doing a fungicide trial in Illinois. We actually did a swarm application where we had 2 drones out there flying. We had plans to do a couple different fungicides and then a check. And we got there the day of, and they had a massive amount of rain and really low stand count in the top 1/3 of this field. So we decided not to apply there. So we were actually able to, the morning of, change our plan and reduce the amount of pesticide that we used. And you can see the results. So look at this. Here's where we started. And then it goes to that. This area, I'll go back, sorry. This red area was bad. After the application, it was pretty good. This area that we didn't treat got very bad, but it was going to get very bad. And we didn't waste any of the chemical there. Same thing on this one. This is a cover crop seed actually on Liz's boss's field. This is Spencer. He had a very wet, muddy field in 2019. We were having dry seasons last year and this year. But when he couldn't get in, we actually dropped in some cover crop seeds in June and were able to absorb that moisture. And this is a big thing for ag retailers because when you get those prevent plant acres, that's seed they don't sell, fertilizer they don't sell, grain they don't market. And this is a way for us to actually deploy something in those areas where they're otherwise getting no revenue. So we got tons of other examples, but I only have 8 minutes. I'll talk real quickly through the benefits of spot spraying. So this is a traditional fungicide costs and everything. We're normalizing for regular corn prices, but we can change those. So this will show you at 100% of the field, the most profitable thing to do is spray with a tractor. If it's dry and flat and you can get in there, use a tractor. That's the cheapest way to spray 100% of your field. At 75%, you'll see that the drone actually has a cost advantage because we're going to reduce the amount of chemical and application costs just going to those areas. At 50%, you see that this is a money loser for a traditional application situation. At 25%, say we wanted to spray the edges with an insecticide or something else that was just getting into the edges, we can still do that at a profitable manner. Whereas using traditional application options, they're going to lose $2,500 or $3,000. So what this does for an ag retailer, say July 25th, you need an edge spray. There's only one way to do that where it makes economic sense for the grower. And this will get a yes where previously it was a no. Some people ask, what if you did a spot application and missed something? These economics show if you do 25, 10, and 5%, your total spraying cost is still significantly lower than full field coverage. So here's the territories. You can see we're based in the Midwest, but we do have good coverage, going from California all the way to Pennsylvania. We do this with lots of partners. So on the drone side, on the technology side, with different chemical companies, manufacturing partners, imagery partners. I always like to say we have a promiscuous partnering strategy because we don't know who the successful groups are going to be. So we're dancing with everyone at this stage. We have had a pretty significant level of success in fundraising. So coming out of the AgLaunch Accelerator, we raised $500,000 about 6 weeks after we were done, which was pretty quick, and we were pretty excited about that. Then we did a bridge round, and then in the end of 2020, we closed a 7.5 million Series A led by Bayer, their Leaps group, with participation from Innova, Fall Line, Lewis and Clark, a couple manufacturing partners, Ag Ventures Alliance reinvested. So we're really excited to have a list of top tier names that we're able to work with. So we've had a fair bit of success getting press. A lot of these things came from AgLaunch Events and AgLaunch Opportunities, which shows the value of working with them, that's absolutely wonderful. The thing that I really like is actually working with our different contractors in different areas. So you can see, this is a subset of people from all over the country that have come to work with us, and they're up in the field running, once again, with all the licenses, with insurance, with everything that you need to safely and legally use drones to apply in fields. And we're really excited about all the things that we're doing with them. So thank you very much for the chance to share, and I'm happy to answer any questions as we go later.
Thank you, Michael. I've had the privilege of seeing the transformation of Rantiso from your early days working with AgLaunch. You showed some video of a spray application at Agri Center in Memphis, but yet you also are operating in several states in the Midwest and the West Coast. So what advantages do you see, or what's been beneficial to you from a regional approach to solving the major issues in agriculture?
Sure. So we like to get into an area and understand their problems and then use our technology to solve those problems. We're not leading with like, hey, use a drone because drones are cool. We're like, okay, what's your issue? Do we have something that works, or can we take something that we have, modify it slightly? And that's been pretty successful. So everybody has labor problems. So that's one that we can solve with automation. We just hired a salesperson down in the Mid-South area. He's actually based in Jonesboro, Arkansas. So we're going to do a lot of work with him, understanding the plant growth regulator opportunity in cotton, a lot of rice spraying, all the corn and soybean things we've got figured out pretty well. Just need more opportunities to get in there. So as we have those smaller fields, the oblong shapes, it's a little bit wet, it's a problem. Basically, the harder it is, the better we are at it. If it's a flat, dry field, there's probably a cheaper way to go cover a big bulk of acres. But when it's a really difficult problem area, that's where our drone applications shine.
Michael, we're going to have more time for Q&A a little bit later, and I want to get to John here pretty quick, but there is one question in the queue that I want to direct to you. And Paul asked, how important was the farmer validation to Rantiso in terms of building your business?
Oh, it was absolutely critical because you need to understand what farmers' true problems are and what their motivations are. So going through the AgLaunch program really got us focused on that farmer-centric model. And what we discovered was due to permitting, due to capital and everything else, it was more efficient for us to sell to ag retailers who sell spraying services to farmers than for us to go to direct to farmers. And there's a few reasons behind that. Mostly, I can sell to one ag retailer who's servicing 80,000 acres versus selling to several hundred farmers that collectively own 80,000 acres. So that's, one sale that I have to make versus, dozens and dozens of sales. But we always have to have the end user's needs in mind. So setting up a system that makes sense for everyone through the chain. We make money selling it. They make money buying it, getting access to a technology that gives them ways to solve problems that they couldn't previously. And then the ag retailer and Rantiso make money together while providing the farmer a service that optimizes their ag inputs and gets them a better result with less soil compaction, able to get into the field when nobody else can. So the whole system has to be beneficial for everyone. And you got to talk to farmers the whole way through. So I don't design something it's great for me, but terrible for you. No one's going to buy that. Or if I make it great for you and terrible for me, I'm not going to be in business. So it's good to have that balance there.
Well, it's great to see your success, and we'll get back to you in just a minute. Next,
Thanks.
I would like to introduce John Jackson with Global Neighbor in Xenia, Ohio. Global Neighbor Incorporated has successfully developed multiple products and is leading the way in weed control in a way that is clean, it's environmentally friendly, and it's delivered in a unique way. John, tell us about your product and service.
Great. Well, I appreciate being here. Let me get my screen up and share. Great. Well, again, thank you again for inviting me. So as a company, we developed directed energy floral control. And what we can do that no one else can is use light to kill weeds and make weed seeds non-viable. This is especially useful for farmers who are struggling with herbicide-resistant weeds that cost about $2 billion annually. With our patented spectra of light, we prevent weeds from germinating without any chemicals, improving farmer profitability and reducing their environmental impact. So we're able to kill the weeds when they're seeds. So even a small number of weeds at the wrong time reduces yields and lowers profits. The rapid increase of herbicide-resistant weeds is further adding to profit pressures. Just in the US, herbicide resistance costs farmers $2 billion in a year, and it keeps increasing. And kind of what we're doing today is making long-term weed control worse. So at harvest, many of the problem weeds, some of them shown on this slide, are non-shattered, and the combine collects those seeds and then spreads them all over the field. And this is a problem that's experienced by all grain farmers in all regions across the Americas and across Europe. So our solution to help is the weed seed destroyer. And this is how it works. The left image is an illustration of the combine's thrasher and separator section, with the back being the sieves. The waste output from the sieves is chaff containing the separated weed seeds. We take the chaff, run it through our directed energy weed seed destroyer, and when we blow the chaff back out into the field, those seeds will not become weeds. The weed seed destroyer will be an important tool in the fight against escape and herbicide-resistant weeds. We have scaled prototypes at Central State University and Louisiana State University. And when they run chaff containing palmer amaranth and other weed seeds through it, the weed seed destroyer makes 90% of them non-viable. Like these efficacy studies done by people independent of us, these universities, help us accelerate our early adoption into the field. So in a particular study done by Ohio State, they found their weed seed destroyer made 99% of pigweed seeds non-viable. The non-treated seeds had 97% germination. So of the seeds that were going to go out and get spread around the field, 97% of them could germinate, while less than 1% of the weed seed destroyer treated seeds germinated. So as we know, pigweed seeds gone herbicide resistant, as well as its sister plant, palmer amaranth, and they're particularly troublesome in this region and throughout the Midwest and Mid-South. So the weed seed destroyer, with it, the farmer can tackle his herbicide-resistant weeds without resorting to ever more chemicals, which just make things worse. The weed seed destroyer works with existing equipment. So we take our product, we put it on the combine, but we don't interfere with the combine's operation. We take the seeds that the combine would have spent back out in the field and we make them non-viable. And so what we're able to do is, without changing any operation or adding any labor, we're able to take what would have been a weed in the next year and make it non-viable. So among us, we aren't the only ones who've recognized that harvest weed seed control is important, but we think we have the best solution. You may have heard about chaff mills from Australia and up in Canada. They kind of grind up the chaff and create this cloud of dust that gets into air cleaners and can disrupt normal operations. Chaff liners can have very poor efficacy, but our weed seed destroyer is kind of an elegant way of making weed seeds non-viable. It's a simple, easy to use solution, and yet it's a large market opportunity both globally and in the US. In the US alone, there's 120,000 operating combines, and outfitting those each with one represents a $2.6 billion opportunity to us. So our rollout for our initial target markets, this includes farmers experiencing severe herbicide-resistant weeds and organic farmers who are in need of solutions for chemical-free weed control. We sell to these farmers through the existing ag dealer network. And there's so much interest and enthusiasm in these two markets that we've already had units sold, even though we don't have one on available yet. And we're meeting with folks again next week to arrange for a delivery of another unit later next year. Our go-to-market strategy is to collaborate with selected dealers to reach early adopters who are in those target markets. We, along with the dealer, close those initial deals, and we ask that those customers work with us to become ambassadors to reach others. These ambassadors become our references and provide testimonials, which we use to recruit more customers and more dealers. So as you know, Global Neighbor, we were accepted into AgLaunch's accelerator program, and we're very proud of that this premier accelerator, of course, only accepts a few people. As a big plus for us, we have access to their farmer network, as Rebecca described. These farmers and their network will become part of our initial group of customers and will help us evangelize this solution as we gain broader implementation across the US. We have an experienced team of skilled engineers who, among us, we directed energy technology, and we commercialized products from it. Our team, even prior to AgLaunch, was supported by a group of farmers who brought this problem to us, and they have been dedicating their time and effort to advise us. And our team has generated some substantial traction. We completed $3 million of R&D, created a strong patent portfolio. We have support from the USDA through their Small Business Investment Research Program. We've also licensed the DE technology for a handheld product called the Weed Erase. You can buy one on Sharper Image or Home Depot online. But what we wanted to do was introduce solutions that help farmers control weeds. And the Weed Seed Destroyer is our first product aimed at positively impacting farm profits. So as I mentioned, we licensed the Weed Erase, that consumer product, and we use that royalty along with the sales from the Weed Seed Destroyer to become cash positive in less than 2 years. And we're looking at our metrics in terms of dealer signups and our COGS to measure our progress as we move forward. Take that out. And so I truly appreciate your consideration for hearing about us and what we're about. And what we can do that no one else can is we can stop weeds when they're seeds, saving the farm operator money as they use fewer chemicals, kind of help us all by improving the global environment. So thanks again, Tom. Do you have any questions for me?
Yes, John. One question I have is, how do you think you as an entrepreneur, as an innovator, have benefited from a regional approach to ag innovation?
Okay, great. And so we have a kind of a motto here that the most dangerous thing in product development is an engineer who met one customer, right? And so we try to protect against that. And one of the most difficult things to do is to do exactly that. When you're in startup mode, resources are limited. And so your reach to fly around the country and interview farmers and get different flavors for regional variations is somewhat hampered. And so when we started to work with AgLaunch, it was just a really great thing. We got folks from Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska, Arkansas, Tennessee. And boy, oh boy, there was such a great variation of the problem, how people are dealing with it, and it really colored our solution. So we were able to really refine what we're going to have as a product offering. And so we really appreciated that and feel like it sped up our product development process. There's two kinds of errors you can make: errors of inclusion and errors of omission. So you include something that no one really cares about, that takes time to develop and it costs money on the product, right? And so you lose time to market. Errors of omission are horrible because you take all this time, you develop a product, and yet it doesn't have everything that's needed. And so you go back to the drawing board and have to update the product. So your approach to that is exactly as Rebecca and the AgLaunch folks lay out: get the involvement, get it involved early, and help and have that color your product offering. And I feel like that's what we're doing, and we will introduce this product much more swiftly. In September last year, we had nothing. And so right now we have something that's very close to being in the field. So
glad to hear that, and glad to hear that you're finding success with this approach, and we're glad to play a small part of it if we can. I would like to bring back all of our panelists at this point and address some of the questions that are in the Q&A. Hopefully you've been able to see some of those questions. And first off, Danny asks, you've covered a number of things that are a benefit to startups, but what are some of the mistakes that startups make? And let's start with you, Rebecca, and then I would like to pitch it to Liz to hear her perspective as well.
Sure, and Liz is probably more qualified to answer this question as the actual analyst, but I think for us, it's not being coachable or understanding the value that the farmer brings. So sometimes we have a couple of companies that have come through and founders who are like, oh, I know this or I know that, especially if they're been farming or their experiences in one region, kind of like John was saying. What we have found with this most recent cohort is they all had really interesting and varied experience in agriculture. And then they started talking to some of our farmers in Tennessee in the Mid-South, and they were like, oh, your weed problem is different than ours, or the soil type is different. And so like understanding the kind of the value of the farmer's input kind of at the very beginning.
So recognizing what you don't know is
Yeah.
is just as important as what you do know. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Liz, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think the number one mistake that some founders make is not validating their assumptions. They're not going out and actually talking to their customers enough to understand their value proposition or what the problem really is. And furthermore, on top of understanding what the problem is, you know, what's the best way to solve it? Because the way that they might have in mind may not work at all for a farmer's operation. And then I would add, I think, you know, a lot of times you can fall into a build trap. You want to get that perfect product in the hands of farmers, but that can delay getting to market. And so making sure that, you know, you're working with customers in, you know, tangent with the building of your product and making sure that your timing is right, because obviously with seasons of crops, you know, the time to get into a field is very short. And that's, again, a lot of the reason we're building this farmer trial is to diversify the crop types so our companies can get into fields for longer periods of times. But for certain companies, that's not always the case. And so making sure that you're aligning the timing of your product development with actually getting that data to verify those assumptions.
Very good. I guess I want to take that question to John and Michael. Can you share with us maybe some early mistakes that you made that you can own up to at this point?
Sure. I was thinking of one that wasn't necessarily a mistake, but just a learning process. So we had a group on the East Coast that wanted to buy a drone from us, and they're like, well, if you come out and do a demo, we're definitely going to buy. And like getting to North Carolina was really expensive. And then I had the thought, well, rather than spending $2,500 to get all of our guys there, what if we brought them to us and like even paid for half of their flight, or it ended up being like $1,000 flight and everything else for them to come, which was kind of ridiculous to pay someone to come see a demo. But then once we did that, we realized, oh, people really like this. And we started having 5 people, then 10 people, then 30. And then we had to put a limit on how many we could have there because they were so popular and people wanted to come in and see it. So it was not necessarily a mistake, but just like kind of a learning process that thank God we did this, because that's become one of our best ways to show people of you know, how the whole system works. So I think that comes down to like what Rebecca was saying about coachability and just learning, like, we thought about this, and we had to kind of meander our way towards getting the eventual solution. But that's a good way to do it.
John, any lessons learned for you?
Unfortunately, there are so many. You know, I'd say my biggest one is the undercapitalization issue. You know, and that we are in a second round of starting the company up. So you know, to be quite honest, we started and fell flat, and then recombined everything and got going again. But I'd say our biggest mistake was just don't, we went after a certain amount of money, which is what we needed. We couldn't raise it, so we were short. And then we're like, well, we'll just try. We'll figure it out. You know, we'll go forward, right? And what a dumb mistake. And so I think that's probably our biggest thing is just, you know, don't, you know, because the funds are so short. And then if you take that and then you don't perform, you're far worse off. It's better just to, you know, bite the bullet, figure it out, wait a little bit longer, get things aligned, and then, you know, springboard from that, then try to, you know, half do it initially and struggle throughout the rest of it. So
sure. Alex, I've got a question for you, and then we'll get back to the Q&A box here in just a minute. But as an economic developer, how do you know and recognize early success or potential for early success with a business you're working with or trying to recruit or that's looking to expand?
That's a great question. I don't know if I have a good answer for that, to be honest. I'm definitely the type that I'll generally personally just sort of pursue every lead and act as if. But generally, you know, there's usually like early commitments, right? That are early commitments or investments that are getting made, and that's what I think you always, when you're feeling somebody out for a new business or they're going to move somewhere, words are great. But actions tend to speak louder, and so we kind of wait for those kinds of and it's real. I'm being very sort of vague and theoretical, but we work a lot of recruitments, and until you see, until you have signed something or some sort of purchase contract for a piece of property or a building or a lease or anything like that, it tends to just be theoretical. We generally, for us, we'll work with somebody sort of to the end. I think with entrepreneurs, entrepreneurship hasn't been a focal point for SEDCOR, to be honest, over its 39-year history. But since I started at SEDCOR, not because of me, but just coinciding with when I started, we sort of added entrepreneurship to our portfolio. And so we have somebody who works for Oregon Entrepreneurs Network, which is another statewide organization, and we have a venture catalyst in our region. And so we do a lot of referrals. And so we'll work with a lot of existing businesses, and we'll refer a lot to Small Business Development Center, our venture catalyst, and whatnot, so they can get some more one-on-one assistance. And generally, like I would say, we don't have the answers, but we know a guy. And that's what our value is, being able to, to make referrals, to point people to the resources that they need. And so we refer, we do a lot of referrals for everybody. Sometimes even those referrals, unless somebody commits, like, hey, I signed up for the class, or I signed, I did the follow-up, and I sort of, put some time and investment of my time into something, then yeah, that's generally how I would say at least that's how I approach it.
That's a good point. At least in my experience in public service, we from time to time have businesses approach us, and you can tell usually early on, do they have a business plan? That's usually a telltale sign if they don't have one, how serious they are and how well thought out they are with their next step. So I appreciate that very much. Russell asks, and this is directed to both Rebecca and Liz, he asks, in reviewing and examining your startups that you work with, how much of a management audit do you do? Do you look for deficiencies? Do you provide or point to outsourced expertise in those deficient areas? Rebecca, do you want to start first?
I think Liz was going to go for it.
Go for it, Liz.
Yeah, absolutely. I can go ahead and go first. So, like I said, we invested a very early point in the startup's life cycle, so to speak. And so oftentimes there might just be one founder with some part-time help, or maybe two co-founders. And so it's obvious to us that there will be some gaps in the management team. But again, it all comes back to why team is so important when we are making an investment decision, because we're really relying on those founders to be able to attract and hire good talent. And we may point out where gaps exist, and we may make introductions or recommendations, but we don't do matchmaking. And again, that's because we really are betting on these founders being able to be the people that can carry that.
Sure, and it's very similar process. We have had very few issues with founders or any real concerns. I think what we have found and what we are able to provide is, as a company grows, there are obviously things that they learn about running a business or could use some help with strategically, that we're able to provide some support through a couple of different sources. So we have federal grants, we have a state mentor network that we operate. So we're able to pair those up, and in some cases we can even shoulder some of the cost for strategic planning or an executive coach or some of those things that that companies need as they grow, which is good. I mean, those are all things that that are good signs that like we can help along the way to continue that progress.
I guess I have one other question for the group, and that is, what can we do both in the public sector, maybe through the nonprofit organizations represented here? What can we do to better support and encourage regional collaboration? What are some of the barriers? Who wants to go first?
I can go. I have a lot of thoughts, but and I'm sure Liz and Alex do as well. I think one of the reasons that we as a company have been successful and have been able to support companies that are ultimately going to be successful is that the state has supported us and recognized that especially in agriculture, it's not necessarily defined by our state boundaries, and that ultimately our farmers are the ones who are going to be reaping the benefits, maybe literally, with having access to the technology and seeing those companies grow, but then also having an equity stake in that, compensating them in some way for the expertise that they've given, and the time and the energy and the data and all of the things that they've done. So I think it's hard sometimes because, and Alex will probably talk about this too, traditional economic development feels like a big win. Like it's, we did this and it's here and that's our win. And taking this regional approach, just like you said at the very beginning, what's good for East Arkansas is good for North Mississippi, is good for West Tennessee, is good for East Tennessee. And there is a big tent and there is a big pie, and there's going to be plenty of it for all of us. So we won't be competing. I think, again, these examples here, Rantiso and Global Neighbor both, neither of which are located in Tennessee, but as Michael said, he's now created a job in the area with hiring a rep in Arkansas who might live in Memphis because Jonesboro is not that far. Like there are a lot of like residual benefits to that we're excited about.
Sure. Liz, I know Spencer and others with Ag Alliance believe in the collaborative approach to things. How are you delivering that message to your state leadership or other state leadership?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, that's something that we've really relied very heavily on AgLaunch for, is they have really perfected this model, and the state of Tennessee has been an excellent partner in doing that. And so really our message here has been, you know, we are going to be sort of the first adopter of this regional approach. And we, you know, AgVentures Alliance is going to be the people who kind of put our money where our mouth is, and we're going to fund and support this, you know, first year or two of these trials, but then we can show, you know, the data and the proof is in the pudding to our state leaders to say, you know, this is what works and this is what makes sense. And our state is really great about innovation and supporting innovation, especially our economic development. And so we hope that this can just be kind of one additional avenue that they're supporting that with.
I will point out that we have met with state leaders of our neighboring states and Iowa to share this concept. The Southern Commissioners of Agriculture recently met in Arkansas, hosted by Secretary Ward there. And there is certainly interest, I think, among all of those leaders to learn from and try to cultivate more of a regional approach, both from a private and public sector standpoint. So I think we're headed in the right direction. There's one more question in the queue that, Michael.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that also. So we got the pitch from about half dozen different states and local areas that come here. And I will say from a company perspective, someone offering you $50,000 or $20,000 with a requirement that you have to set up there, you have to have an office, you have to have all these other things. It was almost preposterous. Like I could get $25,000 and spend 15 of it in your local economy, supporting someone that's going to be remote and not really core to what we're doing. And the only people that would do that are people that are desperate and their companies are going to die anyway. So a lot of these systems are setting themselves up only to accept near-term failures. And they ended up wasting a bunch of money. Because I've seen other portfolio companies like, that's not a very good idea. That's not a great team. And they jump from these one thing to one thing to one thing. They get 20,000 here, 50,000 there, and they're traveling all over. And then those programs exist, but if you have the attitude of setting up something for the benefit, like Tom said, like we're coming back. Like we were in Memphis, we spent a lot of time and energy down there, and now we're building a whole system out just to solve for that. It took some time, but we're getting there. So that longer term view from an economic development perspective is so much more valuable.
Thank you for that perspective. We appreciate that very much. There's one more question, Rebecca, directed at AgLaunch. And Paul asked, is the AgLaunch Farmer Network satisfying most portfolio companies' needs, or are there gaps where additional farming expertise would be helpful to entrepreneurs?
Sure, I think that's a really great question and really kind of puts a nice bow on this regional approach, honestly, because we are looking to constantly bring in farmers with different kind of operations and different experiences with different crops, different soil types, all of those pieces. So we can ensure that we're offering or have something to offer any startup who's interested in participating. So we have done an extensive amount of legwork to onboard urban farmers. So we have a pretty thriving urban farmer network in Memphis. And it's why the relationship with Iowa and Oregon at this point is so key, because they have offerings that we don't, just by nature of the actual physical geography and what's happening there. So the specialty crops, as we're seeing a move towards diversifying, crops regionally, it's also something. We had a project last year, and Michael can talk about this a little bit, but we sourced cover crop seed from Oregon, planted it by drone in Iowa and by autonomous tractor in Tennessee. And that's pretty incredible. When you really think about an example of how it can all work. So I would say, yes, we have a pretty diverse group, but that's why we're partnering across the country. And so we have other regions that, as we are growing, we will be looking to expand into those areas to diversify our offerings. But we're always looking for new farmers. We don't have as many organic 1 acre farms as we would like, probably. And so Ray Tyler is like, okay, guys, I'm running a lot of trials and it's awesome, but if there's anybody else who might want to. So if you know of innovative farmers or early adopters, we would love to have those conversations with them and get them onboarded into the process, because we think it's really valuable and that there's a lot of benefit for them in participating.
Well, thank you very much. That is all of the questions currently in the queue. If you have interest in networking with our panelists, so there will be an opportunity shortly or immediately after this. A link has been posted in the chat box where you can go and participate. I just want to take time to thank our partners again. That includes AgLaunch out of Memphis, North Carolina Biotechnology Center in Research Triangle Park, North Carolina, and AgStart in Woodland, California. Just a reminder, the next forum will be sponsored by AgStart and will be held on July 21st. And the topic will be food safety innovation. I want to thank all of our panelists again. I appreciate your perspective, appreciate your energy, and from Nashville, Tennessee, we'll say goodbye for right now.